Hi, hello. Today I wanted to talk about what's on my palette, mostly talking about the limited palette and a split primary palette. So I do have some additional colors that were tubes of paint up here, and I have colors that I have previously mixed for my current project. I wanted to start out with talking about a limited color palette, the benefits of having such a palette, and what colors to add, and the use of shortcut colors. So one of the benefits of having a limited palette is that your painting is going to be more cohesive. You're not going to have random colors scattered throughout, hopefully. The other benefit is being able to learn about color theory. I enjoy painting primarily portraits, so I use white, a lot of yellows and reds, and then to desaturate skin tones, I also use a variety of blue, purple, and green. Learning how each of the colors on your palette works is beneficial as an artist. It cuts down the time mixing a color if you know which color you want to add and what effect you will get using that color. Also, various colors within both oil paints and acrylic paint are going to have different properties. For example, phthalo blue and phthalo green are translucent, so if you apply them by themselves, they're not going to have an opaque coverage. You're going to see a lot of the canvas through the painting. So to start with, I have good old titanium white. Titanium white is different than mixing white. It generally has one or two white pigments in it, and compared to mixing white, which also has a few pigments in it, but mixing white is more to bulk up your paint rather than change the tint of your paint. If you want to lighten it very slightly, mixing white is your best option. I prefer titanium white. Most of my paints I inherited from my mom, so they're very old Winsor & Newton water mixable oils. My preference when I go to buy new paint is, of course, Gamblin. The brand of paint is a little less important than which paint you prefer. I recommend trying brands like Winsor & Newton water mixable, Gamblin. There's a variety of good quality paints out there to try. My next color is going to be cadmium yellow medium. Again, this is a very old Winsor & Newton container. Most of their tubes are going to look more along this line, although this is Winton, which is their student brand. Cadmium yellow as well as cadmium red both contain cadmium, which means you either want to wear gloves and definitely don't eat paint. Usually that happens that you have paint on your hand and you go to eat. Then you're eating paint, and cadmium is a known carcinogen, especially if you're eating it. Many of the websites say that the skin absorption is fairly minimal, but many people also prefer to wear gloves. Cadmium and cobalt is the reason why. In addition, oil paint is kind of hard to wash off your hands. My next color is going to also be a cadmium, and that is cadmium red. This one is cadmium red dark. With cadmium yellow, you can also substitute it for Hansa yellow medium or Hansa yellow deep. For cadmium red, you can substitute it with naphthol red. Both of these will also have hue, which means it's made without the actual cadmium. My next color is going to be a nice ultramarine blue. Now, ultramarine was originally made with lapis lazuli. So French ultramarine is the chemical that makes ultramarine blue look ultramarine blue without having to go into the ground underneath Afghanistan to get a precious gemstone. Sometimes they'll just say ultramarine blue, still probably not lapis lazuli unless you're getting very expensive paint. These are all warm primaries, so my yellow leans a little bit more towards orange, my red is also leaning more towards orange, and my blue is leaning more towards red. My last color to complete my limited palette is going to be good old burnt umber. Burnt umber is a darker brown. You can also substitute it for burnt sienna. Burnt umber tends to dry faster than other pigments. Burnt sienna dries a little bit slower. Burnt umber has more of a yellow hue to it. Burnt sienna is more of an orangey red. So with these colors, If I mix up yellow and I need it to be less yellow, I can combine it with either brown, or I can mix my blue and red to make purple. A little bit into the yellow will desaturate it. If I have a flesh tone, which is going to be an orangey color, and I need to desaturate it, I can add just a touch of blue. Jamie, you're not using black. What if I want to make something darker? So adding blue and red will make something darker. Blue and burnt umber or burnt sienna is going to make a very close to black color. I prefer this in portraiture because when I start adding black to my paint, I get a very gray cast to it. And my flesh tones look a little bit more zombie-like than lively, which I don't want. I do use black, I just use it very, very sparingly. Now, to make this a split primary set, not only do I want a set of warm colors, I also want a set of cool colors. So if cadmium yellow is my warm color, then I'm going to go with Hansa Yellow Light or cadmium yellow light, or even a lemon yellow in order to give me that cool yellow color. Now with this color, which is this guy right here, he almost leans a little bit green. Which is why he's a cool yellow, even though yellow overall is a warm tone. For my cool tone of red, I like to go with Quinacridone Rose. This is Quinacridone Deep Rose. Alizarin Crimson is usually the choice for a cool red. However, it doesn't have great light fastness. It's going to change over time. So Quinacridone is a more permanent version. You can also get Alizarin Crimson Permanent, which solves some of the light fastness issues. For my blue, some people will go with a cobalt blue. My school goes with a manganese blue hue. I have Cerulean blue hue. This one is a blick color. Again, hue means it's not using the real cerulean. And with these colors, I am able to mix most colors under the sun. Now, why do I want a split primary compared to just the primaries? Great question. If I'm mixing flesh tones, which is what most of my work is, I like to use warmer colors. So I have the warm yellow and the warm red, and I'm going to combine those with white. But sometimes, like in the cheeks and the fingers, we have a bit more saturation. If someone has a cool undertone, the Quinacridone Rose is going to help cool that color down as well as keep it more saturated. With the warm colors, mixing warm red with warm blue, so Cad Red and Ultramarine, is going to give you a kind of desaturated, not exciting purple, which may be what you want. It may not be what you want. I happen to love purple. So a cool red like Quinacridone and a cool blue are going to give you a much better a much more vibrant purple. If you are into landscapes and similar things, then which yellow and which blue you use is going to determine what kind of green you end up with. Now, if I were to take this palette and start adding onto it, the more you work with colors, the more you realize that you want shortcut colors. For example, when I'm mixing skin tone, when I want to darken it, I tend to reach for a purple. So I like Dioxazine purple. It's one of my favorite shortcut colors. I do occasionally use a Viridian green to cool down my skin tone. If you are painting a lot of landscapes, Viridian green, phthalo green will be very helpful. Now, instead of either of these yellows, my go-to yellow is yellow ochre. It is another earth tone similar to burnt umber. The benefit of using a yellow ochre is that it is less saturated. So if you are creating a lot of foliage, trees, leafy trees, especially autumn scenes, yellow ochre is probably the better choice. And you can use that to combine with your greens, with your blues, to make a less saturated green. You can also use it in flesh tones to make a less saturated orange, which is what flesh tones are. A desaturated orange, so I find it a very useful shortcut color. Okay, so if I take, this is my Hansa yellow, I'm going to divide that in half. I can pick up some of my Cerulean, and that gives me that beautiful bright green. Now, with that same yellow, I can dip into that Ultramarine, and we see that we get a very different color there. If we slip into our Cad Yellow, we'll take half of that and pick up that Cerulean, and then here I'm going to add Ultramarine. So here we have our cool yellow, cool blue, cool yellow, warm yellow, cool blue, and warm yellow, cool blue. So we have now created 4 different shades of green just by combining a few different colors. Of course, we can then add more white to each of these. We can add more blue or more yellow to slightly change the hue of them. We can also pick up, say, the Cerulean, which is really bright, and go in with our desaturated yellow ochre and get a different color. Now, this also applies with our purples. So if we take our lovely cadmium red and a little bit of Cerulean, right? So this is a very dull purple. If we take that red and we add our ultramarine blue. So this is Cad Red Deep, Ultramarine Blue. We see we get a warmer violet color. Now we'll pick up some Quinacridone and some Cerulean, and then Quinacridone and Ultramarine. So here we see cadmium red with Cerulean gives us a very gray color, especially since Cerulean tends to lean a little bit more green. Cadmium red and Ultramarine give us a lovely burgundy color, but it's not quite purple. It may help to add a bit more blue. Quinacridone and Cerulean, so our cool red and our cool blue, give us this very vibrant purple color. And then our Quinacridone and Ultramarine give us this lovely color. Now, if our purple was too purple, if we wanted to bring down this color a bit, we can swipe into our deep red, our deep yellow, and start to desaturate that. So in review, I recommend starting with a limited palette. Usually people want to go with the warm primaries, so a Cad Yellow or a Hansa Yellow Deep, a Cadmium Red, and an Ultramarine Blue. That's going to give you a wide variety of colors, help start out with color theory. Rather than using black, I recommend a Burnt Umber, which you can mix with that Ultramarine Blue. After you have the primaries, I recommend getting a cool version of each of the primaries. So Hansa Yellow Light, Cad Yellow Light or a Lemon Yellow, a Quinacridone Violet or a Alizarin Crimson, and then a Cobalt Blue, Manganese Blue, or Turquoise will suffice. And that way you have a wide variety of colors on your palette. Of course, as you determine what you enjoy painting, you will eventually have shortcut colors like yellow ochre or a nice Viridian that help create a more varied color palette. Of course, each color that you add, a little bit of experimentation, but also understanding the properties of that paint helps you make more informed decisions and cut down on some of the more frustrating experimentation. Anywho, I believe a lot can be said about an artist based on what primary colors they decide to pick. So let me know what primaries you enjoy down in the comments below. I know there is also the option to go with a lemon yellow, a cyan, and a magenta in order to mix all the colors. That is, of course, up to you. This is a more traditional approach. So if you prefer CMYK over RGB, also let me know that down in the comments, and I will see you in the next one. No, you don't belong. You're getting hair on my painting. Can I help you?